Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
The topic today is, what are we claiming? What are you claiming in your life? It's an interesting thing what you are claiming. I love the reading today because one of the things that can happen is when we don't like what's going on in our life. I mean, one reason why we claim, we have all these possibilities ahead of us. So when we say, what are you claiming? Often we come from our head and what we want to claim. And the reason why we come from our head is because we're actually not feeling very comfortable in our world right now. And I'm just talking about individually. We'll get to the collective, but individually, I might not be feeling good, or it's good, but I want to go more. I've stagnated, I've plateaued, I want more. And so there's this discomfort, and from that discomfort, I know I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling now, so I come from my head and I start imagining a new and better possibility and claiming that. The problem with that is that it does feel disconnected from our heart. It's a way to get away from what I'm actually feeling. If I just create this incredible new reality, I'm going to feel so much different. And so there's a level of feeling that it's dishonest because it is kind of dishonest. We don't mean to be. We're creative and imaginative and intelligent beings. I did this. I don't know if this is actually accurate. That's a problem sometimes when things come in the moment. I was like, I should probably check on this. But I'm just thinking that when things like AI and technology, it seems like it's been really coming from the head, this incredible ability, but we haven't always checked in with our heart in that creative potential of what has been coming out. So what we were hearing in that incredible reading, thank you, Cher, for that incredible reading, is that we have to actually feel into our heart. That if we're going to claim our new reality, it has to be connected to our heart, or it is inauthentic. And as that extraordinary reading talks about, is when we're in our heart, that's where we also hold pain. It's the truth teller. So we can't pretend to not feel things that we don't feel if we're actually accessing what's in my heart today. The author attributes Huang Po, who I've never heard of until this morning, with the idea that Chris has, until I heard it this morning, and about if the more we sit with our heart, that those other feelings will arise, we'll feel them, and then something underneath reveals itself. And I remember all the way back to this morning, I was reading this reading, I thought, that sounds so much like Zen and Shunryu Suzuki's taking the one seat in the midst of whatever's happening. So I looked up Huang Po, and he's a Zen teacher. And I mention that because it reminds us, Huang Po's from China, Shunryu's from Japan. When we have truth, it doesn't matter what your culture is. It doesn't matter what your tradition, we recognize it. I'm like, oh yeah, I get that truth. This person I don't think is Zen in either way. I think Martha Beck, that reading is a coach. She went to Harvard and is a coach. I don't think she's a Zen practitioner, but we recognize truth. I love that part of it. Anyway, that when we take that one seat, when we allow our true self to emerge, it's natural and it's extraordinarily powerful because it's our natural self. It's who we really are. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. Emotions, things that we're emoting because of the external experiences are temporary. They're not a powerful place from which to come. So if we're claiming a new reality based on an emotional reaction to something, we're not coming from a very strong place. We're coming from I don't want this, so I'm going to go over here, and there's this energy behind it. But when we deepen and sit in our heart space, and this takes some time, it's not like for 5 seconds I'm going to connect with my heart. To really feel into the depths of our heart, and feel into that power and that presence, that natural power starts to emerge. Our natural self begins to emerge. And what I love about it is it includes the positive and the negative. We didn't get there by spiritual bypass. We got there by actually feeling the feelings. There have been times when I'm meditating and I will just be meditating and suddenly all these tears come up and I'll start crying. I'm not always, sometimes I know why, sometimes I don't know why. And it's just this pain that's been locked in there. I didn't even know it was there. But it wasn't until I took time to just simply be in my heart, in that space, that these things get unlocked. And I don't have to analyze them. I don't have to go back and say, okay, what caused them? Sometimes I do, because it feels like it's trying to tell me something, that the bad stuff, or if it's like it's got some messages, then I'll spend some time, because I want to get my heart's messages. I want to hear its voice. I want to hear what it has to tell me. And it always ends up coming to a place of peace, of clarity, and of power. I don't feel fear anymore. We feel fear when we're not connected to our heart. Does that make sense to you? We feel fear when we're not connected to our heart. They had this interesting study by 3 psychologists. I read this article a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, I don't know which, in the New York Times about older people, which is some of us in here. Sherry says she wins. So the older people tend to remember things in a positive way. That, in fact, a lot of that negativity starts to dissolve and go away. And that really struck me. First of all, I love that, and I've noticed it. Like, as I go, I had my 40th high school reunion. I wasn't able to go to it because it was right before my mom's internment. But I got to see the videos, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the sense 40 years ago was so different than going to a 10-year reunion, because everything was still so fresh from high school. A lot of those things that used to bother us, what I remember is the good stuff. Doesn't mean I don't remember the bad stuff, but it doesn't own me. And that's the part of that meditation or spiritual practices and prayer gives us, is this vastness of the oneness. So every little detail isn't taking us over and controlling us. This is a really important part. I remember when I first came to a spiritual community, I'd been to a therapist, and in the therapy, the first 2 years were great, and I didn't know much about therapy, so I never told them like I felt complete, so I just kept going. My dad was paying, so why not? And thank you, Dad. But what was interesting is a habit pattern developed of always looking for problems, because that's what you do in therapy. Where do I feel sad? Where do I feel down? Where do I feel limited? What's wrong in my life? It became a habit pattern. So when I found new thought, it was like nothing's wrong. And I was, wait a minute, I know there's something wrong. I've trained my mind to look for the thing that is wrong. And so it's been great in coming to new thoughts saying, what is already right and will always be right? It doesn't come and it doesn't go. And so then I had to integrate it, because it didn't mean that things didn't go wrong. It didn't mean I didn't have sadness. It didn't mean I didn't have pain. And it was immersed with this ever-present love. This love that was strong enough and big enough that it could hold all of my experiences, the good and the bad. And what's beautiful, it seems, is that as we get older, we get to go more into our eternal self, because now we have a much bigger picture than when you're young. And we can see everything, or not everything, but a lot more of our life, and our view changes. One of the things that came out of my high school, well, actually it was before my high school reunion, I just didn't know about it. A book came out last year called Dreamtown, and it was about the high school I was raised in. It was written by a Washington Post journalist. Because the high school I was in, it first started out in this very sort of rich, upper middle class, ideal community. Like something I never thought about that we had, and it wasn't until I read it that I'm like, oh, that did happen. We had a really long driveway, and people didn't want garbage trucks they didn't want to take their garbage cans to the tree lawn because it made the tree lawn look ugly. So they had little carts, and they would go drive up your driveway and pick up your garbage cans for you, dump the garbage, and bring it back. Little things like that never even occurred to me until I read it in the book. But then many black people started moving, and it became a very intentionally integrated community. So by the time I was in high school, my class was almost exactly half black, half white. The class behind me was exactly half black, half white. And how much race played a part in my childhood from elementary school, junior high, middle school. We talked about it. My year, some kids started recognizing the challenges and that peer power. They started a group called the Student Group on Race Relations, which I got to be part of, and went back to elementary school, and we started talking about race issues with elementary school kids. They just had their 40th anniversary. They've been around for 40 years in that school, continuing to talk about race. It is an ever-present issue, something that we are so used to talking about. One of my high school classmates said this, and I thought, I was the only one. When I went into college, this guy I was dating, he goes, "What is wrong with you? Everything you say ends up being about race." And I thought it was normal, because that's where I came from. So there's this book, Dreamtown how's it doing on this ideal of integration, because there certainly were a lot of problems and a lot of pain. And so these two guys from my class, both black guys, decided to create a podcast. So they've had this podcast, and most of them are with my high school, people I went to high school with. And so I've been listening to it. They asked me to be on it. I may or may not, who knows. But I was been listening, and it's been extraordinary. Every one of them acknowledged the race issues, continuing race issues, but the joy and the love and the happiness of growing up in Shaker Heights just pervades. And I was so surprised, because when you're there, that was always the issue. And now, no, family, friends, all these great memories, and they're just laughing hysterically as they're talking about growing up and their childhood memories and the things they used to do. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I love this part of getting older, because we have a much bigger perspective, and we stop taking every little tiny thing like it's the most horrible thing in the world, because that's what drags us down. That's what gets us down. And so this is all going to come back to claiming what we want to claim. So feeling this healing energy around my past, like this was good stuff. There was issues, but it was good. Just claiming that has been so powerful. And I'm claiming it naturally from my heart. As I'm listening to all these stories, I'm like, wow, I'm just so grateful. Because one of the things that can sometimes happen when we look at things from a psychological point of view is we're always dissecting things and where things went wrong. And to suddenly go, oh, there were things wrong, but man, overall, it was good. Now, I know not everybody has that same experience. But we can focus on and claim what is good, even if it might be small, because where we put our attention has an impact on us. And it does not deny the pain. That's why we continue to go to our heart and do the healing. And that's why there'll be still times where I'm meditating and the pain will come up. It's not like sometimes when we describe it, we're like, if you just do this, you'll get these results, and now you're all perfect, whole, and complete. It's messy, and it's happening all the time, but behind all of it, that's why I love this teaching, why I love this awareness. I have to do a side note. When I say this teaching, what I mean are these universal truth principles which belong to everybody. I sometimes when we say this teaching, I feel like this is our teaching and they have their teaching. Part of what I love about what we teach is it's in every teaching when we look for it, when we go to the depths of being that mystical consciousness of oneness, is everywhere. And that's what we're always, always looking at, is that one power, that one presence that is in everybody in all the time. That's an incredible gift. I was just listening, I was listening to someone, I'm like, man, I wish they understood that there's wholeness and this oneness it's already here. You don't have to seek it, it's now. And we're all made in the image and likeness of this wholeness and this perfection. That's such a great foundation to begin any conversation with. Goldilocks. There's a positive side and there's a negative side. The positive side. I didn't know this until today because I was determined to use Goldilocks in my talk. There is a Goldilocks principle. And the Goldilocks principle is that the best way is always the middle way. So there's the threes in all the different, the porridge, the chair, and the bed. One is too hard, one is too much, one is too little, and always the right way is the middle way. So even Stephen Hawking said this intelligent universe came about because we were in the exact the Goldilocks principle of everything was just right. so we could create this this intelligent universe could come into being. And so they were using all these different professions and saying how this principle of just right occurs. So that's the positive side of Goldilocks. So I want to speak about that just right for a minute, and I want to give I don't know, I can't, the words skip. What I want to say is I'm going to talk about the Democratic Convention. Since I've been a minister, I have been in communities with both Republicans and Democrats. And one of the things that I feel is very important is that our spiritual communities are a safe place for everybody, and that everybody has not only a perspective that's important, but that's essential. We need to have different perspectives, and I honor all perspectives. So I'm not trying to take one party side over another. I just happen to watch this. I don't watch convention. I've never watched either convention ever, but something compelled me to watch, and it was so compelling that I have to talk about it because I think we can learn from it. There has been concern in the Democrat. There was this lifelessness in the Democratic Party because they weren't excited about their candidate. And in comes this candidate that I'm not sure this would have been picked if there had been a whole big nomination, but Kamala found her way there as the vice president, and there's just been this embracing. And I thought, man, it's like the conditions are just right. And that just rightness, I could see in that Democratic convention. Anyone who was watching it got to see the joy. Where there was too much or too little, suddenly there's just joy, like everything fit, and the people who were in that Democratic convention, the people who were watching it, were feeling the joy of that just rightness. There's a power in that, and from that joy, those people, the people that were speaking, were claiming a vision. They were claiming possibilities. And what's interesting about that to me, about watching that, is that nothing has changed externally. We still have climate change. We still have all the economic issues. We still have all these issues. None of those have changed. Not a single one of them. And they are all going to be very difficult. These are things that are going to be hard to work on. The foreign policy, the national policy, everything. Cultural policy, everything. Economic policy. These are hard, complicated, difficult issues. That hasn't changed. What changed was the willingness to see possibilities. The claiming, we're going to claim what we want, and it's coming from the heart. I didn't feel like it was from spiritual bypass. I can't speak for people, but it did feel like there was a recognition of, it was that the election might be difficult, and whoever is going to be president, it's going to be hard. There's no getting over that. So there wasn't spiritual bypass, like, oh, this is all so easy and wonderful. No, it's going to be hard, but we're claiming joy. We're claiming possibility. And so I want you to look about that in your own life. Like, it doesn't mean that whatever you might be challenged in any area, you might be flowing in one area, in another area you're not. You get to claim where you want to put your attention and have it be an authentic heart claim. The heart, yes, it can feel sadness, but behind that is this extraordinary boldness. And that's what we want to claim, is from boldness. Goethe said, boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And so in your own life, to claim what you want your life to be with boldness, with courage. The shadow side of Goldilocks is thinking, oh, and everything has to be just right in order for me to claim it. Everything has to be just right before I'm like happy. We get to claim it before the just rightness. It is our claiming it that makes it just right, in fact. We decide when we want to claim what we want to claim is just right for our heart. So the moment you know what your heart wants, it's just right for you, and be bold in it. And it's going to take courage. What do they say? Courage is cœur from French, le cœur, the heart. Because when we come from our heart, it's going to be different than anything else that you've seen. You've heard this a million times. No one can be you but you. You don't have someone trailblazing ahead of you. You have to stand in your own power, in your own truth, and be bold and shine the light as you in a unique way that nobody else can. And that solidness and the strength of that comes from being so deeply connected to our hearts. So connect to your hearts this week. That's the invitation. Connect to your heart. Know who you are. And one of the best ways to do that is in spiritual community. I remember I had a friend, and he would do things that I thought we were at Agape, which is a spiritual community like this, just a much bigger one in Los Angeles. And he would do things, like he would say things that would make me very uncomfortable. And he would say, I'm like, do you really want to say these things out loud? And he'd say, Harriet, if I can't do it in a spiritual community that talks about unconditional love, I can't do it anywhere. This is my practice place. This is the place where I start practicing being my authentic self and see how it goes. And sometimes it was a little messy. People used to say to us who worked there, oh, you must be like feeling like you're walking on light. No, it was daily hard work. We had 1,200 students. There were only 2 of us. There was so much work to be done. There's always little dramas happening. But the thing that was happening, as well as the little dramas that happen in every job, is prayer, is authenticity. How do you really feel? How do you speak up? It's an opportunity when we're in spiritual community to be our authentic self, and even if it gets a little messy, you're going to be with people who are going to help us find a way to get back to ourselves, even as we help others, help them get back to their heart and their self. Because when we're in our authentic self, we're not in blame, right? We can't be in our heart and be in blame. That's impossible. When we're in our heart, we're standing in our truth, and we're helping other people stand in their truth, and we're learning how to do it together. Even if we have different personalities and different styles, we have to do the work in the spirituality, because we don't get to pretend that there's some idyllic place. No, it's here. If it's not here, where's it going to happen? I've never forgotten that. If it can't be done here, where can it be done? When we're bold in who we are, we change the world. And we can see that in a spiritual community, because, especially in a community like this, because we're small. And so our little things that we do make a big difference. There was a story, and I shared this once years ago. One of Agape at that time had like 2 services, 1,200 people. It was a sanctuary like this, so chairs were always being moved around for the classes, for all the different things that were happening. So you go in, and the chairs would be a mess. And so finally, this one guy came to service, and he just took upon himself, I am in charge of the chair ministry. That's what I do. And he got a team of people together, and the way he did the chair ministry, and it was a lot of work, by the way, it was a lot of chairs, is you always prayed in, and you always prayed out. Everything was done in prayer. So it's a normal thing, putting out chairs. And then we were not allowed to talk while we were doing the chairs, because we were to bless every chair, and the people, whoever was going to sit in there, we put blessings there. And that was my first ministry that I served. Actually, no, that was the second ministry. The first ministry was called Unfolding While Folding. It was the program ministry. It's a great name, isn't it? But again, prayer before and after, listening to spiritual music while we're folding the bulletins, chairs, doing it in silence, blessing it. So I remember telling this story at the beginning of when we started, and I didn't think anything of it. And then it was actually probably like a year later, I was talking to Beth Stiles. Hi, Beth. She used to get there early and put out the chairs. And she just happened to mention, she goes, oh yeah, every time I put out the chairs, I'm blessing every one of them. And I think of that because people used to say we were in a little tiny space. People say, man, this is such a tiny little space and small group of people, but you have such incredible big energy. I would think I'm in a big church. And I'm convinced it had so much to do with those blessings that Beth did with every chair. When we're in a spiritual community, we get to be bold in our spirituality. We don't have to hide it. We don't have to be secret about it. We can let it out. And we can discover who we are as a spiritual being in a spiritual community. So it is my hope as you are claiming who you are from your heart, that you include this spiritual community, that you include giving from your heart into this community and let your light shine. Let us be impacted by your presence. Even if it's standing at the door and greeting, thank you, Marianne and John, for my hug this morning coming in, the tech people, the chairs, whatever needs to be done, that whatever you're doing, whether people are seeing you do it or not seeing you do it, it's impacting this community in a powerful way. Be bold, claim who you are as a spiritual being, and claim who you are as a citizen of this planet. You are needed. Your heart is needed. Will you join me in that? Yes. Claiming? Thank you, God. I love you all so much. I love, I just had sometimes I get choked up, and what it is to have the blessing of loving God, of loving this presence, and being in a room full of people who also love this presence. Nothing better. Nothing better. Okay, so let's pray. And so we just celebrate and give thanks for the power of love, the power of joy, the power of possibility that is for all of us, ever present. This presence that is unchanging, ever present, unchanging and ever present. It is not something only in the future, although it is in the future. It is not only in the past, though it is in the past. It is right here and right now in this present tense, which includes all the past and all the future and all dimensions of time and space. We get to revel in the vastness of love, the vastness of joy, the vastness of peace, the vastness of freedom, the vastness of harmony in our heart, right here and right now. The entire cosmos is right here. The queendom and kingdom of heaven, of beauty, of grace, right here, of abundance, of prosperity, of creative expression, all right here within us. Each and every one of us, a cosmic force, a cosmic power in this world. And so today I celebrate each of us claiming in our own unique way from our beautiful heart, our heart of cosmic power, new possibilities and new fulfillments in ways we can never possibly imagine with our mind. And yet our heart knows what it knows, and we say yes, and we allow those possibilities to pour through and as us on every level and dimension of our being, individually and collectively as this gorgeous, beautiful lighthouse community that is just such an expression of pure love and light. My heart overflows in gratitude. And I know that the power of our individual and collective self is impacting this planet. We might feel like a small, tiny little community, and yet the power of our hearts, that cosmic power of our authentic, natural hearts, is impacting the entire cosmos. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I claim this, I accept it, and I know it is done. I invite you now to join me in saying, and so it is. Amen and amen.
I walk in God.